Good evening, and welcome to the December meeting of the New York chapter of the Association of Recorded Sound Collections. Today, okay, if you're going to respond to that, I can't wait what's to come next. So tonight's talk, which is co-hosted by me, Joe Patrych, and Seth Winner, is about comedy in music. It's called Laughter at 33 1/3 RPM. There were many comedy and parody recordings made in the era before it became easy to do it, which is the current era. We'll have one example that's a technical marvel, actually, but we'll do that later. The very diverse musical palette included people who were wordsmiths, amazing wordsmiths. Tom Lehrer and Allan Sherman are, in my opinion, the two best. Parody, Victor Borge, Peter Schickele. Yes. Sound effects, Hoffnung, Spike Jones, and various other genres, you might say. We're going to show a lot of them. I guess we will begin. Why not? Now, what I had decided, I'm going to put up, these are our bios. They don't need a lot of screen time. But I will just say that for the first item is our only real recording, kind of, I guess you could say, a standard recording, not a funny recording. It is actually done as a reference standard for what will come after it. If you're finished reading this, we can move on to the next slide now. And what that is a recording of Diana Damrau doing the Queen of the Night aria from, which opera is it?
The Magic Flute.
Magic Flute. That's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure.
Okay.
Piano's my thing. So,
no kidding.
Let's hear Diana Damrau. So that is your reference standard of that aria. Fantastic performance by a fantastic singer, Diana Damrau. And I played it just to prepare your ears for the onslaught of what is to follow. A recording made by one Florence Foster Jenkins. This is actually fairly famous. Let's just say that her percentage of nailing the notes is just a little bit lower than Miss Damrau. Florence Foster Jenkins. Seth will talk a little bit more about her after we play.
You get a dose of this.
After we play a dose of this.
Okay.
So, I think my cat can hit better notes than
Right.
this. My cat should be an opera singer. Anyway, I'm going to hand it over to Seth now. He's going to talk a little bit about Ernie Kovacs and his parody on this subject, which probably is, in my opinion, the appropriate response.
Thank you, Joe. As you saw in that montage to the right, it said The Glory of the Human Voice with Florence Foster Jenkins. You may wonder, why are we including this? Well, there were rumors about her. She made recordings for Melotone. They were pressings that were done about, I think, what, Joe, 1939 or 40 thereabouts, I think? And they had become a great underground thing. And in 1955, RCA issued that 10-inch record, and the one you just saw for the Die Zauberflöte was reissued in '62. And this, I have to thank Ben Modell. He spoke with me when after we had prepared a presentation at the New York Public Library on Kovacs, and you can read what happened. He was doing a replacement for Sid Caesar during the summer on NBC on Monday nights, and apparently Edie Adams, his wife, who was a trained Juilliard student, had gotten this record that had come out about 1955, and as always with Ernie, he had a humor that was called the back of the head. It would just stay there, and all of a sudden it would come to the front, and he said, I have an idea. And as you can see what it says up here about, they couldn't even identify it when he was going through the videos. Joe, could you go to the next one? Yeah, and that's the infamous record. Yeah, as it says, at the Paley Center is working for the first DVD Kovacs set, which was issued in 2012, 2011. And it said on it, usual zany opening, Florence Foster Jenkins bit. And he asked me, he said, Edie was very gifted that she can do that. I said, yes, I know. There was a record she put out where she sings off pitch. But as good as Edie was, or another person we'll be hearing in a little bit is as good as that, no one could beat Miss Jenkins. And I was the one that said, yeah, in fact, if you listen carefully, you can hear the clicks from the LP as they're playing it. Well, thank you, Ben. Here it comes. Here's the sketch. Ernie's reaction to this, to the recording of Mein Herr Marquis that was on the LP. Joe, next one. repeating it again, Joe?
No, no, no.
Oh, ooh. Okay. This was something that just came off the back of his head. By the way, when he picked up his hand and he flashed and you saw, what is it, a pinky ring on there, a rather large-sized one. I've been asking Josh Mills, who was Edie's son from her second marriage, if he had that ring. I think my father, who was a jeweler selling to customers in New York, may have sold that. That may have been one of his rings. I have to find out by looking inside of it. But it's amazing how someone could take something like that, so minimalist. All you need are 3 chairs and a recording and some sound effects, and probably came up with one of the greatest skits on live TV. By the way, if you'll notice, he's trying to put the rifle together and it's not coming together for a moment there. He's getting a little nervous, and it's live TV. You can't, you know, it's all timed very tightly. But that was his reaction to probably one of the first spoof records that had come out at the time in 1955. Now, we then go on to Flanders and Swann. You want me to talk about them?
Sure.
This is a wonderful parody of the last movement of one of Mozart's horn concerti. And they based it on the famous recording that Dennis Brain had done in the mid-50s with Von Karajan and the Philharmonia. The other thing is the tempo they take is rather fast, because when they were figuring it out, they were listening to the recording and the turntable was going a little too fast, so the tempo was a bit rushed. They didn't hear that. The thing was, instead of being, I think, an E flat, it's up an E. So, very, very witty. You know, it's a typical type of British type of humor, but very, very funny. I must warn you, though, where we got it from, whoever put it up, the audio is not exactly synced to the video, but you'll get it. It has all the text to tell you what's going on.
It has the lyrics, yeah.
The lyrics. All right, Joe, why not?
I once had a whim and I had to obey it, to buy a French horn in a second-hand shop. I polished it up and I started to play it in spite of the neighbors who begged me to stop. To sound my horn, I had to develop my embouchure. I found my horn was a bit of a devil to play, so artfully wound to give you a sound, a beautiful sound, so rich and round. Oh, the hours I had to spend before I mastered it in the end. But that was yesterday, and just today I looked in the usual place. There was the case, but the horn itself was missing. Oh, where can it have gone? Hasn't anyone seen my horn? Oh, where can it have gone? What a blow, now I know I'm unable to play my allegro. Who swiped that horn? I bet you a quid somebody did, knowing I found a concerto and wanted to play it, afraid of my talent at playing the horn. For early today, to my utter dismay, it had vanished away like the dew in the morn. Tootie. I've lost that horn. I know I was using it yesterday. I've lost that horn. Lost that horn. Found that horn. Gone. The stops I chose to kill. I willingly pay a reward. I know some hearty folk whose party jokes pretended to hunt with a quad. Gone away, was it one of them took it away? Will you kindly return that horn? Oh, where is the devil who pinched my horn? I shall tell the police I want that French horn back. I miss its music more and more and more. Without that horn, I'm feeling sad and so forlorn. I found a concerto and wanted to play it this way. I found to playing the horn, but early today, to my utter dismay, it had totally vanished away. I wanted to play it, but somebody took it away. I practiced the horn and was longing to play it, but somebody took it away. My neighbor's asleep in his bed. I'll soon make him wish he were dead. I'll take up the tuba instead. Wah, wah.
Absolutely brilliant. I forgot, that was on an album they did live. It was called At the Drop of a Hat.
Hat, that's right.
And then they did a sequel called At the Drop of Another
Another
Hat.
hat, right.
Right. Okay, now we go on to, you think Florence Foster Jenkins was bad, but she meant it. We're now going to hear Jo Stafford with her husband Paul Weston. And let me get it right. They went under a name after they had started an incompetent lounge act called, under the name of Jonathan and Darlene Edwards. They made a bunch of records. In fact, on YouTube, there's a very funny video where they're trying to sing a song Jack Benny wrote, and they do it as incompetently as they can. And Benny says, "It's wonderful. It's the best performance I ever heard of it." And they said, "Well, we wanted to get out of it, Jack. That's why we did it this way." "No, no, I want you to record it." And they just run out. It's wonderful. And there are a number of records they did in the 50s, but this one came up. Well, let's hear the original. It's the Bee Gees. It's doing Staying Alive from the hit Saturday Night Fever. All right. Okay, here we go, Darlene. Here's Jo Stafford's version of the same song you just heard. Well. Again? So.
No thanks.
Right. Yeah, that came up, and I said, this has to go in. Of all the things, this was very late. You know, they were doing this stuff 20 years earlier. And if you'll notice, too, she's not singing the same lyrics, probably because of the fact that they were copyrighted, and they had to use a different arrangement. So, all right. You're up, Joe. Oh, I have to add something in after you play the first one. Don't go by that. That's the 12th Street rag.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So, one of the things that happen other than these kind of parodies is experimentation with creating new sounds. We have a few examples of that, but the first one is a song called Witch Doctor. Now, if any of you remember Alvin and the Chipmunks, this was an early version of an Alvin and the Chipmunks kind of song. And Witch Doctor is basically a silly song about a guy who goes to a witch doctor who tells him to say the following, recite this sound or these lyrics that I don't even remember all of them, but something that ends with Walla Walla Bing Bang. And,
Right. Okay.
and the artist's stage name, so-called is David Seville, but the real person who did this is a brilliant guy named Ross Bagdasarian, who actually created that high-pitched vocal by recording his own voice, very slow at a slower tape speed, and then bringing it up to normal speed to make it super high, and then synchronize it with his own voice. And honestly, the result is pretty amazing for 1958, when you didn't have digital to do things like this, and you had to basically use an analog reel-to-reel machine. And the result is quite fantastic, actually. So if you can put up with the fact that the song is unbelievably stupid, but it's
became
very
a hit.
it's very, very funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, Witch Doctor.
I told the witch doctor I was in love with you. I told the witch doctor I was in love with you. And then the witch doctor, he told me what to do. He said that I told the witch doctor you didn't love me true. I told the witch doctor you didn't love me nice. And then the witch doctor, he gave me this advice. He said that ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. You've been keeping love from me just like you were a miser. And I'll admit I wasn't very smart. So I went out and found myself a guy that's so much wiser, and he taught me the way to win your heart. My friend the witch doctor, he taught me what to say. My friend the witch doctor, he taught me what to do. I know that you'll be mine when I say this to you. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. You've been keeping love from me just like you were a miser, and I'll admit I wasn't very smart. So I went out and found myself a guy that's so much wiser, and he taught me the way to win your heart. My friend the witch doctor, he taught me what to say. My friend the witch doctor, he taught me what to do. I know that you'll be mine when I say this to you, oh baby. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. Come on in. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bing-bang. Ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah, ting-tang, walla-walla bang-bang.
Now, this was actually also an example of an early stereophonic technique where you would have one voice in one channel and one voice in the other channel. It was, they weren't mixing them. They were just separate tracks.
Right.
And
Binaural.
Binaural.
What
is
they did with the voices, the band
Right.
behind them,
That's
that's a
right.
stereo spread in it.
And as I mentioned, technically for 1958, this was very difficult to do.
Yeah.
So kudos to Ross Bagdasarian for technical wizardry in the 50s.
By the way, Joe, in that photo, as he's singing, you can see he's got a cigarette in one hand, and
Yep.
behind him is an Ampex, I think 200. You could see the handles on them when you went get into the mechanics of the machine underneath.
Those were the days when everybody had a cigarette in their hand. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving ahead to Ray Stevens.
This is our generation.
This is our generation.
Yeah.
You may recall that in the 70s and 80s, there was a fad called streaking, where people would take their clothes off and run through a public area.
Or run on a football field. or
Football
something.
field,
Yeah.
in a restaurant, in a
Yeah.
supermarket, whatever. So Ray
Yeah.
Stevens made a parody song of an announcer announcing the streak. It's quite funny.
Hello, everyone. This is your Action News reporter with all the news that is news across the nation on the scene at the supermarket. There seems to have been some disturbance here. Pardon me, sir. Did you see what happened?
Yeah, I did. I was standing over there by the tomatoes, and here he come, running through the pole beans, through the fruits and vegetables, naked as a jaybird. And I hollered over to Ethel. I said, "Don't look, Ethel!" And it's too late. She'd already been in since.
Here he comes,
Boogie dad, boogie dad,
there he goes,
boogie dad, boogie dad.
and he ain't wearing no clothes.
Oh, yes, they call him the street.
Boogie that,
Fastest thing on 2 feet.
boogie that.
He's just as proud as he can be of his anatomy. He gon' give us a peek. Oh, yes, they call him the street. He likes to show off his physique. If there's an audience to be found, he'll be streaking it round, inviting public critique.
This is your Action News reporter once again, and we're here at the gas station. Pardon me, sir. Did you see what happened?
Yeah, Dave. I was just in here getting my tires checked, and he just appeared out of the traffic. Come streaking around the grease right there. Didn't have nothing on but a smile. I looked in there, and Ethel was getting her cold drink. I hollered, "Don't look, Ethel!" And it's too late. She'd already been mooned. Flashed her right there in front of the shop so.
He ain't rude,
Boogity, boogity,
he ain't rude.
boogity, boogity.
He's just in the mood to run in the news.
Oh, yes, they call him the street. He likes to turn the other cheek. He's always making the news, wearing just his tennis shoes. Guess you could call him unique.
Once again, your Action News reporter in the booth at the gym covering the disturbance at the basketball playoff. Pardon me, sir. Did you see what happened?
Yeah, deep. Hey, Tom, I was just going down there to get Ethel a snow cone. Here he come, right out of the cheap seats, dribbling, right down the middle of the court. Didn't have on nothing but his PAs. Made a hook shot and got out through the concession stand. I hollered up at Ethel. I said, "Don't look, Ethel!" It was too late. She'd already got a free shot. Grandstand. Right there in front of the home page. Well, yes, they call him the street. Here comes the kid. Who's that with him?
Ethel! Is that you,
He's
Ethel?
just as proud as he can be.
What do you think you're
His
doing?
anatomy, he gon' give us a
You
peek.
get your clothes on!
Well, yes, they call him the street.
Ethel, where you
He
go?
likes to show off his physique.
Ethel, you shameless hussy!
If there's an audience to be found, he'll be streaking it round, inviting public critique.
Say it isn't so, Ethel!
Well, yes, they call him the street.
Ethel! That song was from 1974, actually. And, you know, one thing is interesting is this Ethel thing. You have an image in your mind of Ethel as being an older woman who's obviously fascinated by the naked guy running around. So that's I think, a subliminal thing within the song as well. Of course, this song also features a lot of sound effects. This is merely an intro to the king of sound effects, which was Spike Jones. Yeah. And I will let Seth talk a little bit about Spike Jones and introduce our next item.
What can one say about Spike Jones? An innovator. Started making records for Victor, I think, just at the beginning of World War II. And of course, his most famous one was In the Führer's Face, which was $1 million seller, million copy seller, several million copy seller once it came out. And he had radio shows, and then eventually had a TV show for a while in the mid-50s. So we were figuring there's so much to pick of his. It's such a treasure trove. What do you start with? Well, we found something that is very, very clever, which I figured I can date it now. It's probably from the summer or the fall of 1956, because there's a reference to Elvis Presley in there. And this was around the time when he had gone on the Milton Berle show and he started gyrating his hips, and all the moral people out there said, this is obscene, he can't do that anymore. Even Kovacs did a very funny one at the end of one of his shows about how to watch Elvis Presley behind a dresser, a dressing divider with just the guitar coming out. But Spike Jones comes up with his own version of it. This is 12th Street Rag, one you will not believe being performed or seen. And I got to tell you something. He had to have crackerjack men in his orchestra to play what they're doing there. And in fact, early on, his clarinet solo was Mickey Katz, who then broke off to become, the famous Parody singer on first Victor and then on Capitol Records when Vaughn Monroe had him thrown out. All right, Joe, let's hit it.
That was our own special arrangement of 12th Street Rag and featured Larry Collins' collapsible trombone, Wilbur Hall's stereophonic bicycle pump, and our Hole in the Head trio. And for the first time on television, we showed the bottom half of Elvis.
It was Billy Barth. That was Billy Barth.
Barty.
Barty.
B-A-R-D-Y, yeah.
Right, Billy Barty, I'm sorry. When you see him, you know him. He was in an awful lot of movies, had a very, very long career. And for someone who was, under 4 feet, I think he was, from what I understand?
3'9".
9. He lived into, his 70s, if I'm correct?
76.
76, which is unusual for someone of that stature, that he lived that long. The next one, Joe, if you can hit the next slide. The next one over. Okay. Nope. Back. Nope. All right. Okay, what happened to it? All right. A couple of slides are missing. What we're going to hear next was from a CD that was issued back about 20 years ago. It was an RCA special product. It was called Spike Jones, The Man Who Murdered Music. And on there was an unpublished parody he did at the very end of his career in 1963 on Carmen. And it's one of the funniest damn things you ever heard in your life. And it had not been released. It had been in the icebox at RCA until it was resurrected. And I have a friend by the name of Mike Keefe who did the remastering on it. And it even has the original parody on Vaughn Monroe, Ghost Riders in the Sky, that had to be withdrawn because of the way they made fun of Vaughn Monroe in it. So here is Spike Jones on his own take of Carmen, and you'll hear the incredible sound effects he gets in each of the selections that he plays. Yeah, that's Spike for you. The next one is we're going from the ridiculous to the sublime. What program would not be complete without Peter Schickele and P.D.Q. Bach? He hit his absolute pinnacle, I think, sometime in the late 60s through the mid 70s. And on one of his Vanguard LPs, I was in college at the time, I ran out and got it. It had on it something called Eine kleine Nichtmusik of Mozart. And it is an absolute wonderful parody of we're playing the first movement and in the intro to the second for obvious reasons, of how he was able to interleave and weave the main theme of the Mozart work and then put in other classical references that would go along with it. See if you could figure out some of the passages that are interpolated into this. Joe, go ahead.
By the way, Peter Schickele still alive and well. He was born in 1935. And he, highly trained musician, straight classical composer, as well as writing tons of incredible parody music. Also a radio broadcaster, brilliant, brilliant guy. And I had the pleasure of meeting him once, and he was humble, like many great people. Very humble and just liked to do his thing. Probably did it as well as anybody, because let me tell you, it takes a lot of ability to do what he did in that Eine kleine Nick music. Another individual of high musical training, really high musical training, who used it for the most hilarious comedy routines was Victor Borge. Born in 1909 as Borge Rosenbaum in Denmark. He lived to be 91. He died in 2000, near the end of 2000, in Greenwich, Connecticut. And of course, many people know a lot of his routines, which are very, very funny. This one is a famous film of him doing the opening of Liszt's Second Hungarian Rhapsody for piano 4 hands. It happens that his partner in this is a pianist I knew quite well, Leonid Hambro, who is a real virtuoso pianist, but also a guy with a fantastic sense of humor. We had a lot of laughs. I met him late in his life. He died when he was 86. But he did this thing, Hungarian Rhapsody #2. Let's just say this is not your typical 4-hand arrangement. It takes a lot of ability, a lot of choreography, a lot of thinking to come up with something like that. And two magnificent musicians in Victor Borge and Leonid Hambro. Now, another item we have of Victor Borge is more on the parody side, and I don't know who first came up with this idea, probably was him. The idea that when you're reading a text, you can make the text more interesting by enunciating the punctuation. And herein we have Victor Borge's phonetic punctuation.
I invented it many years ago when I first noticed that people who speak together often fail to understand each other clearly. Now, when we read or write, we use punctuation marks in order to underline the meaning of our sentences, but we do not have that support when we speak. So why not integrate punctuation marks into our speech? Then we can underline what we intend to convey to each other verbally. Now, what the hell was all that noise? I always get involved in all these speeches and things like that. And then, but of course, and then of course, and that is it was right. I'll teach you how to use the system. It's very simple. A period sounds like this. A dash. An exclamation point is a vertical dash with a period underneath. See? The comma. Quotation are two commas. Or if you happen to be left-handed. Question mark is a little difficult. And finally, the colon, the two little dots, you can put them over each other, or you can put them under each other, or you can put them wherever you want to put them. That's it. I have a short story right here in the beginning of the book. It's coming up. Page 9. Oh. Page 6. In the open window there suddenly came light. Beautiful Elinor sat alone dreaming of but one thing. 2 years had passed since she met Sir Henry. She could still remember the unhappy evening when her father had thrown him out. They had been sitting in the park, and Henry had said, "Darling." Is this the first time you have loved? She had answered, yes. But it is so wonderful that I hope it shall not be the last. It's getting a little messy here, but otherwise. Would you like to move back one row? Suddenly she heard a well-known sound. It was he. In 2 strides he was near her, embraced, kissed and caressed her. Henry! What is love? She asked. He answered, well, I couldn't live without it. She asked, I'm sorry. She was a little left-handed. Where have your thoughts been? And he answered, with thee, my maiden foot. Suddenly he had gone. Oh. All she heard was the well-known sound of his departing horse. I invented it many years.
Okay.
Little encore there.
Yeah. By the way, that was among the first records Borge did, I think, for Columbia on late 78. It was a 10-inch album, then they converted it to early LP, where he does that phonetic punctuation. Of course, on that same theme, we are finally getting to one of the kings of the parody, the great Allan Sherman. And the one we're going to do, it's from Allen in Wonderland, from Warner Brothers. I think it's 1964. He's still at the peak of his popularity, which started to wane shortly after that. And it is one of the most clever things you have ever heard. It's Night and Day of Cole Porter with punctuation marks.
Punctuation marks, right.
And I must say one other thing, that what really makes these recordings is the fact that he can't sing. And at one point, when he was so popular, someone had suggested to him, you ought to take singing lessons. And his arranger, who does all his background music, Lou Bush, looked at the guy and he said, are you nuts? If he learns how to sing, he won't be funny anymore. And the story goes in Allan Sherman's autobiography. This record came out, and they sent it over to Cole Porter, who was already not well. He would die within a few months. They said he kept playing that selection over and over, that he couldn't stop laughing his head off when he heard the parody. So, you want to add something?
By the way, a little bit about Allan Sherman was born in 1923, and unfortunately he died in
1972.
72. He died in 72.
48
years old.
Yeah.
Heavy smoker and overweight, unfortunately.
And destitute at that point. He was in the actors'
yeah.
charity hospital or old age, the old age actors' home for the indigent.
We'll have a couple of other selections of his, but for now, and obviously he must have gotten this idea from Victor Borge, which is much earlier. That was, as Seth said, the late 40s. He actually performed it live on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1952. Mm-hmm.
Night and Day by Cole Porter, with punctuation marks included. Like the beat, comma beat of the tom-tom.
When the jungle shadows fall.
Like the tick, tock of the stately clock.
As it stands against the wall.
Like the drip, comma drip of the raindrops.
When the summer shower is through, some voice within me keeps repeating,
colon, quotation mark,
you,
comma,
you,
comma,
you,
exclamation point, close quotation, period, dash, night and day, comma. You are the one, dash. Only you, comma, beneath the moon, comma, and under the sun, semicolon. Whether near to me or far, dot, 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 it's no matter, comma, darling, comma, where you are, dash, I think, comma. Night and day, period, new paragraph, night and day, exclamation point, under the hide of me, dash. There's an oh such a hungry yearning, comma, burning, parenthesis, inside of me, close parenthesis, period. Well, inside of me is a parenthetical phrase that describes where the yearning is burning. And its torment won't be through till you let me spend my life making love to you, asterisk. because there's a footnote at the bottom that tells who's making love to who. Spend my life making love to you. Day and night? Night and day, question mark?
Allan Sherman, one of the great wordsmiths, we will have more of him. He essentially took existing songs and changed the lyrics. It's a little different from the other great wordsmith that we'll get to later, Tom Lehrer, who actually wrote most of his own music. The next item is a very funny song made even funnier by the fact that the singer appeared on American Bandstand and lip-synced to the song. And it is hilarious, a hilarious video. It's Bobby Pickett, who is known as Bobby Boris Pickett, in this song called Monster Mash, and a mash in this case is a type of dance. Listen carefully to the lyrics. They are incredibly funny, and his acting is equally funny. This will start off with Dick Clark, who will announce him.
Ladies and gentlemen, back for the second go-around in the one that was so popular not too long ago, a thing called the Monster Mash. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Mr. Bobby Pickett.
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise,
He did the mash.
he did the monster mash.
The monster mash.
It was a graveyard
He
smash.
did the mash.
It caught on in a flash.
He did the mash.
He did the monster mash. From my laboratory in the castle east to the master bedroom where the vampires feast, the ghouls all came from their humble abodes to get a jolt from my electrode.
They did the mash.
They did the monster
The
mash.
monster mash.
It was a graveyard
They
smash.
did the mash.
It caught on in a
They
flash.
did the mash.
They did the monster mash. The zombies were having fun.
In a shoot.
The party had just begun.
In a shoot.
The guests included Wolfman, Dracula, and his son. The scene was rocking, all were digging the sound. Igor on chains, backed by his baying hound. The coffin bangers were about to arrive with their vocal group, the Crypt Kicker
They
Five.
played the mash.
They played the monster
The
mash.
monster mash.
It was a graveyard
They
smash.
played the mash.
It caught on in a flash.
They played the mash.
They played the monster mash. Out from his coffin, Drac's voice did ring. Seemed he was troubled by just one thing. Opened the lid and shook his fist and said, "Whatever happened to my Transylvania twist?"
It's now the mash.
It's now the monster
The
mash.
monster mash.
And it's a graveyard
It's now
smash.
the mash.
It's caught on in a flash.
It's now the mash.
It's now the monster mash. Now everything's cool. Drac's a part of the band, and my monster mash is the hit of the land. For you, the living, this mash was meant to. When you get to my door, tell them Boris sent
Then
you.
you can mash.
Then you can monster
The
mash,
monster mash.
and you my graveyard
Then you can
smash.
mash.
You'll catch on in a flash.
Then you can mash.
Then you can monster mash.
Monster mash.
Igor, you impetuous young boy. Mash good.
Monster mash. Monster mash.
Ladies and gentlemen, back.
Now Seth will talk a little bit about Martyn Green.
what can one say about Martyn Green? He was Mr. Gilbert and Sullivan. Unfortunately, toward the end of his career, apparently he may have been inebriated. He didn't trust the attendant at his garage to go get his car, and he went up in the portable elevator and his leg got caught in between, the elevator and the wall. And he had, I think he was amputated from the knee down on that leg. But it didn't prevent him from still performing and producing Gilbert and Sullivan productions. The most famous one was The Mikado, if you remember, with Helen Traubel and Groucho Marx for the Bell Telephone in 1960. He was a master of what was called the patter song. And what I want to play is first his original version of a modern Major General from HMS Pinafore. But the one thing that a lot of people don't remember him doing was a Campbell's Soup commercial based on that. And very, very, very inventive, very clever. So first we'll hear the original version, and then we will hear the commercial, which, by the way, is kind of hard to find. I fortunately got it from somebody who knew the secretary of Martyn Green, that he was able to get a tape copy of it many years ago. So, Joe, if you can, we'll play one right after the other.
I am the very model of a modern Major General. I've information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England. I can quote the fights historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I am very well acquainted too with matters mathematical. I understand equations, both the simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I am teeming with a lot of news. A lot of news. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse.
With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. With many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse.
I'm very good at integral and differential calculus. I know the scientific names of beings animalculous. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern Major General.
In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, he is the very model of a modern Major General.
I know our mythic history, King Arthur's answer paradox. I answer hard acrostics, I have a pretty taste for paradox. I quote in Heliojarks all the crimes of Heliogabalus. In conics I can floor peculiarities parabolus. I can tell undoubted Raphaels from Gerard Hoffnung's Zophanies. I know the croaking chorus from the frogs of Aristophanes. Then I can hum a fugue of which I've heard the music's dinner for. Dinner for. And whistle all the airs from that infernal nonsense pinafore.
And whistle all the airs from that infernal nonsense pinafore. And whistle all the airs from that infernal nonsense pinafore. And whistle all the airs from that infernal nonsense pinafore.
Then I can write a washing bill in Babylonic uniform and give you every detail of Caraticus's uniform. In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern Major General.
In short, in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, he is the very model of a modern Major General.
In fact, when I know what is meant by mamelon and ravelin, when I can tell at sight a mouse a rifle from a javelin, when such affairs as sorties and surprises I'm more wary at, and when I know precisely what is meant by commissariat, when I have learnt what progress has been made in modern gunnery, when I know more of tactics than a novice in a nunnery, in short, when I've a smattering of elemental strategy, strategy, I have it. You'll say a better Major General has never sat a G.
You say a better Major General has never sat a G. You say a better Major General has never sat a G. You say a better Major General has never sat a G.
For my military knowledge, though I'm plucky and adventurous, has only been brought down to the beginning of the century. But still in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern Major General.
But still in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, he is the very model of a modern Major General.
Yes, my military knowledge, though I'm plucky and adventurous, has only been brought down to the beginning of the century. But still in matters vegetable, animal, and mineral, I am the very model of a modern Major General.
I know that there are 32 delicious kinds of Campbell's soups, and what is more, can name them all and place them in their proper groups. Begin with oxtail, tasty beef, and then cream of potato, and consommé, of course, Scotch broth and onion and tomato. There's nothing more exciting than a steaming cream of mushroom soup, unless it's an inviting cup of French-Canadian green pea soup. The Campbell's cooks are of the mind the green pea soup is made with hams, and what is more astounding is that Campbell's chowder's filled with clams. Then minestrone, chili, beef, tomato, rice, and if you please, comes bean with bacon, cream of celery, bouillon, and cheddar cheese. There's tasty chunks of beef with noodle, turkey noodle, chicken, rice, and chicken noodle, cream of chicken, gumbo's very nice. Our 7 kinds of vegetable make a healthy A+ group. Yeah, oh dear, A+ group. A+ dupe, A+ goop, A gus soup. Ah, I have it. And have you ever tasted Campbell's cream of asparagus soup?
Asparagus soup? Asparagus, please.
Of course it is. And have you ever tasted Campbell's lovely cream of asparagus soup? So serve your family Campbell soup in winter, summer, spring, and fall. And if you've listened carefully, you'll notice that I've named them all.
Pure genius.
Not to be undone.
As we continue on this
As we
trend.
continue on this trend.
Right.
Is, in my opinion, the greatest wordsmith of them all, Tom Lehrer. And his idea was to take this ubiquitous tune and set it to all the names of the elements in the periodic table. This is quite a tongue twister, I must tell you. As somebody who made a failed attempt to learn it myself, there are some lines here that you just have to wonder how a human voice box and a set of lips can move fast enough to do this. And of course, Tom Lehrer always accompanied himself, and he was quite a fine pianist. It's an interesting story. I'll talk more about him before our next selection, but this is The Elements. This is, by the way, from a live video from Copenhagen, 1969.
Here's a song I always get requests for, but I can't understand for the life of me why. It's simply the names of the chemical elements set to a Gilbert and Sullivan tune. I think the only reason I do it is to see if I still can. We'll try. There's antimony, arsenic, aluminum, selenium, and hydrogen, and oxygen, and nitrogen, and rhenium, and nickel, neodymium, neptunium, germanium, and iron, americium, ruthenium, uranium, europium, zirconium, lutetium, vanadium, and lanthanum, and osmium, and astatine, and radium, and gold, actinium, and indium, and gallium, and iodine, and thorium, and thulium, and thallium. There's yttrium, ytterbium, actinium, rubidium, and boron, gadolinium, niobium, iridium, and strontium, and silicon, and silver, and samarium, and bismuth, bromine, lithium, beryllium, and barium. I left out one, actually. A new one was discovered since the song was written. It's called Lawrencium. So those of you who are taking notes can write it down in your programs. There's holmium and helium and hafnium and erbium and phosphorus and francium and fluorine and terbium, manganese and mercury and molybdenum, magnesium, dysprosium and scandium and cerium and cesium and lead, praseodymium and platinum, plutonium, palladium, promethium, potassium, polonium, tantalum, magnesium, titanium, tellurium, and cadmium and calcium and chromium and curium. There's gold and californium and fermium, berkelium, and also mendelevium, einsteinium, nobelium, and argon, kryptonium, radon, xenon, zinc, and rhodium, and chlorine, carbon, cobalt, copper, tungsten, tin, and sodium. These are the only ones of which the news has come to Harvard. And there may be many others, but they haven't been discovered. Thank you. You may be interested to know that there is an older, much earlier version of that song, which is due to Aristotle, and which goes like this. There's earth and air and fire and water. Here's a song.
Continuing in that vein, Allan Sherman did his tribute to this kind of patter song. There was a very famous piece by David Rose, who was a movie and television orchestrator and conductor. He wrote something called Holiday for Strings.
States.
No. Allan Sherman wrote out Holiday for States.
Ah.
The original song was Holiday for Strings. And with Lou Bush and in the chorus setup, he's another one where he names every one of the states. And when he gets to the last one, it's very obvious which one he's going to end with. And this is also from Allen in Wonderland. That record had so many great songs on it, and it was always a hard record to find once it went out of print. Joe?
There are songs about Montana and New York and Indiana, but the song the nation patiently awaits is the song I now will bring you as I clear my throat and sing you a love song to the whole United States. I love you. District of Columbia, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Alabama, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Oklahoma, West Virginia, California, Georgia, Texas, Maine, Mississippi, Washington, South Carolina, Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, Louisiana, Iowa, Nevada, Kansas, Arizona, Colorado, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, New Mexico, Ohio, Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and Montana, Nebraska, Alaska, Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Utah, Maryland, Kentucky, Oregon, Rhode Island, Idaho, Hawaii, and Vermont, Virginia, Delaware, Wyoming, and Connecticut.
Going back to Tom Lehrer for a couple of more items. So Tom Lehrer, who's born in 1928 and still alive, by the way, 94 years old, but hasn't performed essentially since the mid-60s. He did a few things for Sesame Street. There was a song called Silent E. Everything he touched was brilliant. This was a very interesting song teaching children about the idea of silent E in a song, I mean in a word. But very early in his career, when he was a student at a small local college called Harvard University, where he later taught math and he had a degree in math, actually. Somehow during his sophomore year, probably, people realized that he had this musical gift and a gift for comedy and were encouraging him to write parody songs and songs. He started writing his own songs, and then he rarely took other people's material. The Elements is one of the very few examples of him using an existing song. What we will be hearing are two songs. I'll let them play, I guess, together, but explain what they're about. The first one is called Irish Ballad. It's from Songs of Tom Lehrer, his first record, from approximately 1957, I think.
53.
Is it 53?
My uncle bought the record. It was a 10-inch. It was on there.
No kidding.
I have it.
Oh, because I saw the 12-inch, and that was later.
10-inch. It was a subscription. You had to write to him with a post office box on the back.
No kidding. Anyway,
yeah,
it's called Irish Ballad, and it's about a young lady who will probably not win Daughter of the Year award. And that's followed by Oedipus Rex, based on the Sophocles tome. Another person who will not win Husband of the Year. So this is Tom Lehrer doing Irish Ballad followed by Oedipus Rex. Oedipus Rex, by the way, is live from probably around 64. I think it was from the Evening Wasted with Tom Lehrer.
Yeah, that
yeah,
was right.
From that, there was another one a year later in 1965.
The year that was.
That was, yeah.
It seems that most of the songs that you hear these days. Here's a song. About a maid I'll sing a song, sing rickety-tickety-tin. About a maid I'll sing a song who didn't have her family long. Not only did she do them wrong, she did every one of them in. She did every one of them in. One morning in a fit of pique, sing rickety-tickety-tin. One morning in a fit of pique, she drowned her father in the creek. The water tasted bad for a week, and we had to make do with gin, We had to make do with gin. Her mother she could never stand, sing rickety-tickety-tin. Her mother she could never stand, and so a cyanide soup she planned. The mother died with a spoon in her hand, and her face in a hideous grin, her face in a hideous grin. She set her sister's hair on fire, rickety-tickety-tin. She set her sister's hair on fire, and as the smoke and flame rose higher, danced around the funeral pyre, playing a violin, playing a violin. She weighted her brother down with stones, rickety-tickety-tin. She weighted her brother down with stones and sent him off to Davy Jones. All they ever found were some bones and occasional pieces of skin, occasional pieces of skin. One day when she had nothing to do, rickety-tickety-tin. One day when she had nothing to do, she cut her baby brother in two and served him up as an Irish stew and invited the neighbors in, invited the neighbors in. And when at last the police came by, rickety-tickety-tin, and when at last the police came by, her little pranks she did not deny. To do so she would have had to lie, and lying she knew was a sin, lying she knew was a sin. My tragic tale I won't prolong, rickety-tickety-tin. My tragic tale I won't prolong, and if you do not enjoy my song, you've yourselves to blame if it's too long. You should never have let me begin. You should never have let me begin. It seems that most of the songs that you hear these days on the radio, played by the disc jockeys, apart from rock and roll and other children's records, tend to be motion picture title songs. Apparently producers feel that we will not attend their movies unless we have the titles well drilled into our heads in advance. Of course, we don't go anyway, but at least this way they make back on the song some of what they've lost on the picture. But with the rise of the motion picture title song, we have such hits of the past few years as The Ten Commandments, Mambo, Brothers Karamazov, Cha-Cha, Incredible Shrinking Man, I Love You. I'm sure you're all familiar with these, but a few years ago, a motion picture version appeared of Sophocles' immortal tragedy, Oedipus Rex. This picture played only in the so-called art theaters, and it was not a financial success. And I maintain that the reason it was not a financial success you're way ahead of me, was that it did not have a title tune which the people could hum and which would make them actually eager to attend to this particular flick. So I've attempted to supply this, and here then is the prospective title song from Oedipus Rex. From the Bible to the popular song, there's one theme that we find right along. Of all ideals they hail as good, the most sublime is motherhood. There was a man, though, who it seems once carried this ideal to extremes. He loved his mother and she loved him, and yet his story is rather grim. There once lived a man named Oedipus Rex. You may have heard about his odd complex. His name appears in Freud's index 'cause he loved his mother. His rivals used to say quite a bit that as a monarch he was most unfit, but still in all they had to admit that he loved his mother. Yes, he loved his mother like no other. His daughter was his sister and his son was his brother. One thing on which you can depend is he sure knew who a boy's best friend is. When he found what he had done, he tore his eyes out one by one. A tragic end to a loyal son who loved his mother. So be sweet and kind to mother, now and then have a chat. Buy her candy or some flowers or a brand new hat. But maybe you had better let it go at that. Or you may find yourself with a quite complex, and you may end up like Oedipus. I'd rather marry a duck-billed platypus than end up like old Oedipus Rex. It seems that most of...
He also did the Vatican Rag. Well, yeah, that... We won't get into that. That's the most famous or infamous one. He had done the Vatican Rag. Now we're coming into the bend of the program. Yay! And we are turning back to Allan Sherman for probably one of the most inventive ones he had done. From that same record, Allan in Wonderland, this is a takeoff on the famous glowworm theme, which he calls Grow Mrs. Goldfarb. And for those out there watching this who are too young to remember, there are a couple of mentions in there. One of them, which is what Joe had told me, when he says, "You are Lembrian size," that was the name of a store where women who were big and large would go to buy clothing at the time. And the other one in there, "You ate so much you killed your living girdle." At the time, Playtex had these commercials with the Cross Your Heart bra with the living thing, and Rosalind Russell did it. You know, they do pull it out and you go, she'd go, "See, it crosses your heart. It's a living girdle. You can wear it for 12 hours. So I have to give you that little preface so you'll understand what's going on in this, because obviously this recording was done nearly 60 years ago. So there are some lyrics that are a little dated, but we've just clarified it for you.
Grow Mrs. Goldfarb fatter, fatter. Pile the potatoes on your platter. Listen to me, 'cause I'm your hubby. I just adore you, plump and chubby. I got a letter from the state, dear. You're gonna need a license plate, dear. My little elephant joke come true. Chew, Mrs. Goldfarb, chew. There is so much more of you, more to adore of you, 'cause you're not slender. In your white dress, you're a doll, big as the Taj Mahal, in all its splendor. When you're in department stores, don't use revolving doors, you might get stuck, dear. When you use the telephone, go in the booth alone, and lots of luck, dear. You had for breakfast 2 pounds bacon, 3 dozen eggs, 1 coffee cake, and then you had something really awful, 4 kippered herrings on a waffle, 9 English muffins, 1 baked apple, Boston cream pie, Philadelphia scrapple, 17 bowls of crispy crunch. Then you said, "What's for lunch?" Sweetheart, you are giant size. You are Lane Bryant size, my darling Myrtle. Last Thanksgiving, I was thrilled. You ate so much you killed your living girdle. Have another dozen shrimp, my lovely little blimp. Don't count a calorie. I have just received a stub. I owe the Diners Club a whole year's salary. Eat, Mrs. Goldfarb, daily, nightly. Eat though your chair is bending slightly. Love of my life, I'm glad I found you. Each day I take a walk around you. I can't forget when we got married. Over the threshold I got carried. No other bride would be so sweet. Eat, Mrs. Goldfarb, eat.
All right, I made a mistake. That's from another one of his great records, which was issued in '65 for swinging livers only. As you can hear in there, the emphysema is starting to affect him. You can hear how he's kind of gasping for breath, especially when he's going up high. And that's what he succumbed to only 8 years later. Now we're coming into the home stretch, and we decided to do what would you call it? The etymology?
The trifecta.
The trifecta, or the etymology,
the etymology of the
song.
development of a song.
How it evolved. Shall I, or what? Okay.
Let me talk about the original.
Right. We could play that one first.
So there is a tango called El Choclo by a guy named Angelo Villoldo. It was written around 1903. I think you'll probably recognize it. It's pretty famous. So I'm just going to play the original in a piano version. And now, I believe El Choclo means fire kiss in Spanish. So needless to say, somebody decided to put lyrics to this tune.
Right.
And the song is called Kiss of Fire. It's
Yeah.
also quite famous.
Yeah.
So we'll hear it
Whoa,
now.
whoop, whoop, whoop. Let's get a little more intro. It was recorded by Georgia Gibbs, I think, in the late 40s or early 50s. It came out on Mercury on 78s, 45 LPs. It was a hit, an absolute hit when you hear her singing it. Of course, the sound of the recording itself, it's the wonders of post-World War II engineering, where every compressor they could find could be used in this thing to squish it onto the record. But she, if you listen to her, she could have been an opera singer. So here is the hit from about 70 years ago.
I touch your lips and all at once the sparks go flying. Those devil lips that know so well the art of lying. And though I see the danger, still the flame grows higher. I know I must surrender to your kiss of fire. Just like a torch you set the soul within me burning. I must go on along this road of no returning. And though it burns me and it turns me into ashes, my whole world crashes without your kiss of fire. I can't resist you. What good is there in trying? What good is there denying? You're all that I desire. Since first I kissed you, my heart was yours completely. If I'm a slave, then it's a slave I want to be. Don't pity me. Don't pity me. Give me your lips, the lips you only let.
Well, what happened too, in the 50s, there was a parody. Mickey Katz did one called Kiss of Meyer on Capitol. It was one of his biggest hits. We decided not to play that because the problem there is we'd have to translate 3/4 of the Yiddish that he's doing in there. And of course, and a lot of it is the way he modulates his voice. He does it with a duet with a baritone. You'd have to sit there and just, we'd have to have the lyrics coming up to see what's going on. However...
But it's not as funny as this one.
Oh, no, this is the king of them all. Allan Sherman picked it up from the same album we just saw from 1965. And what makes this even funnier is the fact that he has the audience helping him along to participate in it. And, well, what a way to end the program.
Kiss of Meyer.
Die-dee-die-dee-die-dee-die. 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 The girls go crazy when they get a kiss from Meyer. The kiss of Meyer is the acme of desire. The kiss of Meyer makes their temperature get higher. The kiss of Meyer lit the great Chicago fire. He has a way that makes the ladies feel exalted. He'll take you out and treat you to a chocolate malted, then some pistachio nuts, a nickel's worth unsalted. And after that, little girl, you're through. He'll try to lure you one night when stars are twinkly. He'll call and say, come over, we'll watch TV, my pet. But I assure you, you'll see no Huntley Brinkley, 'cause Meyer hasn't got a TV set. What does he need it? He'd never use it. To him the late, late show is you. The kiss of Meyer is so sweet that none is sweeter. The girls can't wait for him to come and read their meter. He's known all over as the Bronx La Dolce Vita, the Cary Grant of the Grand Concourse. Whatever Meyer wants, Meyer gets, and that's his name. His name is Meyer Getz.
I must add something to that. There are a couple of, hello, we don't need a repeat performance, thank you. How times have changed. This is almost 60 years ago, and even then, when he refers to a bag of pistachio nuts, a nickel's worth unsalted, you used to get a bag like that, but we're talking going back maybe, what, to the 30s or 40s, Joe, when you could do that? Buy a nickel's worth of salted nuts off of a stand.
It wasn't here in the 30s.
The 30s, yeah, but...
I didn't eat pistachio nuts.
Yeah, all right.
I refuse to answer.
All right, you refuse to answer. And then...
You get a pound of shrimp,
yeah.
about 40 cents.
40 cents for a pound of shrimp, yeah. The other thing is, for the younger generation watching, when they mentioned Huntley Brinkley, that was the big news show.
Yeah.
News show, Chet Huntley and David Brinkley, that ran from October of ¡56 until I think about 1970, 71. Everybody watched that. After you had the choice between Cronkite or Huntley Brinkley, depending on what network you wanted. CBS or NBC. Right, and then the other joke, they can't wait for him to read their meter. In the days now where everything's done electronically, you know, the gas company, the electric company would send men out to read the meters. Right. And I think that also alludes to something about kind of risque in the sense that they would come to read the meters of the lonely women in the apartments, as they say. We'll leave it at that. But it's, yeah, it was one of the geniuses. But this is also from that same record, and you can hear as in the beginning how the emphysema has affected his voice and his breath control. Well, would you say?
I will say that
yeah.
In spite of all the great lyrics, to me personally, the funniest line in any song I've ever heard is, I got a letter from the state there, you're going to need a license plate there. That is brilliant. The brilliance of Allan Sherman and Tom Lehrer and all these other people that make musical comedy what it is.
The joy of making people laugh.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
I'm Joe Patrych. This is Seth Winter.
Thank you again.
And
You want to hit the next one? I think we have the final out on this. With any luck? Nope.
Oh, we have a few.
Nope. There we go. Yes.
Oh, is that why we've been?
Wow. Ooh, yeah. Just to let you know, as always, I'll leave this up so people can see it. We have no program for January. Later viewing, it'll be on the ARSC channel. How soon, Joe? Any idea? Who
Soon.
knows?
Soon.
Okay. As of right now, we have nothing scheduled for January. We're hoping in February, maybe. And as I say here, we put in the meeting notice. You know, there are plenty of ARSC people in the New York area who are visiting. Write to me. There's my email address. Let me know if you want to do a program. We're doing an outreach here in the local chapter. So, and our season runs, well, we start in September and it runs through June. And, you know, we usually take off for the summer. And, well, we've got to keep going. And a happy holiday to everyone, holiday season and a good new year. So maybe we'll be back in February with any luck. All right, and thank you, Joe, as always. Right. That's our handshake. So, thanks again.
And have a good night.